What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I am your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thanks so much for being here today. Of course, make sure to subscribe if you have not already. I get to kick things off today with a very fun topic, and that is my very first correction yesterday as I was talking about Christian Watson. I went over some of his stats. I mentioned that he played 195 passing snaps last season per Pro Football Focus. And then I went through all the numbers after that. And unfortunately, while all of my math was correct and double checked and triple checked, when I looked at PFF's site, I saw Christian Watson in a Green Bay Packers uniform, but unfortunately, I was not on his Green Bay Packers page. I was on his North Dakota State page, and he played 195 passing snaps in his last year of college. He played 282 passing snaps a season ago, which obviously adjusts those numbers a little bit. He had 0.145 catches per passing snap, 2.167 yards per passing snap, 0.025 touchdowns per passing snap, which if you were to extrapolate that to Justin Jefferson's passing snaps, which I did in the episode yesterday, it wasn't the crazy video game numbers that I went over yesterday, but it would still have been 106 catches, 1,594 yards and 18 touchdowns, which would have been an incredible rookie season for Christian Watson. All of my points in the video still stand. I still think he is due for a massive breakout season. I think he can be an absolute superstar, but just wanted to correct the statistics a little bit from yesterday that I went over with Christian Watson. A slight change just based on the fact that he played about, 90-ish more snaps than what I had thought he did in the passing game. So my apologies for that. Thank goodness this is my first video that I've had to address a mistake that I made in over 1,000 videos and over 1,800 audio episodes that we've done. So I'm very thankful for that, but wanted to get that out of the way right away. So with all that being said, let's get to our main topic for today. And what I want to do is I want to go over the rookie expectations for this entire Green Bay Packer rookie class this year. I want to go pick by pick. I've done this for playing time expectations, but today, now that I've had the opportunity to see some of these players in OTAs and rookie mini camps, I want to go over exactly what I'm expecting them to do as players and have what type of impact they're going to have in 2023. So let's kick things off right away with Lucas Van Ness. And let's just start by saying I expect him to be your starting edge number one, edge number two, whatever we want to put it at, doesn't really matter. A starting edge rusher if Rashawn Gary is not ready to go for that season opener. If he's ready, it's going to be Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith. I don't think there's any question about that. And once Gary is back, it'll be Gary and Preston. But Lucas Van Ness, my expectation is that he is going to be the first edge rusher up. I also expect him to get some passing down situations on the interior. I even think that he can play one of the defensive end positions, even on earlier downs. I don't think you have to limit him to only passing downs. I think there's a world which exists in which he can play even some of the running downs as a 3-down defensive lineman if you really wanted to go in that direction. I think he will have the ability to hold up just as well as a Dean Lowry did a season ago as a 3-down defensive lineman, even in his rookie year, even as a little bit of an undersized defensive lineman. So I expect him to be I don't know if I want to say like an impact player, because I think when you hear that connotation, I think you're thinking of like a upper echelon player, but I expect him to make an impact right away on this defense. As mentioned, if Rashawn Gary's not there, I expect him to be a starter on the edge. I think he's more than capable of setting a strong edge in the running game. He is very, very capable of screaming down the line and closing that back door and chasing down plays from behind, a la Clay Matthews. He is very capable of making an impact as a pass rusher. I don't think 6 to 8 sacks is out of the realm of possibility, especially with what I expect him to get, in regards to pass rush snaps this upcoming season. I think there's some questions that he's going to have to answer. A is just in general, how does he hold up against the run? If he gets double teamed with a tight end and an offensive tackle, can he hold up at the point of attack there? How quickly does he learn the playbook? As an edge rusher, as a pass rusher, it's not super complicated. Can he show that he can drop back into coverage a little bit to at least flash that ability if needed in a pinch to do so? But this is a player that is just too gifted, too fast, and too powerful to not make an impact in year one for this team. I expect him to far outpace what Rashawn Gary did in his rookie year. I'm not saying he's going to be as good or better than what Rashawn Gary has been in his career. I think that opportunity absolutely exists, but I do expect Lucas Van Ness to have a much bigger impact, partly due to just circumstances. Rashawn was behind both Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith, and both those guys did not come off the field a ton in Rashawn Gary's rookie season, but I expect Lucas Van Ness to have a much bigger impact than what Rashawn Gary did in his rookie season. And like I said, expect him to be the starter opposite Preston Smith as soon as, if Rashawn Gary's not able to play, and as soon as Rashawn Gary comes back, he moves into that third spot in the rotation. And I'll say this as well. It would not surprise me if by end of this season, Lucas Van Ness was a better performer than Preston Smith out on the field. I think we're starting to see Preston Smith just sort of get to that point in his career where he's a solid, average, good football player, but the explosive plays, the game-changing plays are just a little bit few and far between. Doesn't hold up quite as well in just the down-to-down situations. And that's where Lucas Van Ness can come in as well. I think if it's fine, like let Preston Smith be the placeholder as the starter at the edge position, that's fine. But if you can start scaling back some of Preston Smith's snaps, not only do I think that that could benefit guys like Kingsley Nigbare and Lucas Van Ness and the defense as a whole, but I think that's going to benefit Preston Smith. If he doesn't have to play 50 plus snaps a game on the edge, going up and, ramming his head against offensive tackles over and over and over for 50, 60 snaps a game, and you can start getting that to 35, 40, I think you're going to have a fresher Preston Smith, a better Preston Smith. And I think this is going to help the defense as a whole. So I have very, very high expectations for Lucas Van Ness. I'm not saying he's going to be a 12-sack player. I'm not saying he's going to be a Pro Bowl caliber player, anything like that in year one. But I do expect him to make a real legitimate impact. And I think he can start seeing that from week one as he makes his way into this defense, potentially as a starter week one due to that Rashawn Gary injury. Next up is Luke Musgrave. And just right on the onset, I expect him to be tight end one. He's lined up already at tight end one in OTAs. Like that should be extremely telling. And Tucker Kraft missed the second OTA with an injury. He was there first OTA. It was Luke Musgrave. Josiah DeGuara has been there for OTAs. It has been Luke Musgrave. So it very much seems like the expectation going into the remainder of this offseason is that Luke Musgrave is going to be the number one tight end. And the big question for Musgrave is going to be just what he can bring you as a blocker. If he shows that he is capable of blocking, he could see a ton of playing time. If he shows that he struggles and maybe Green Bay just wants to get Tucker Kraft some playing time, Josiah DeGuara some playing time, and they want to use Luke Musgrave to his strengths a little bit more, maybe not wear him down and start playing him 50 snaps a game, especially in a rookie season where and you look at the snaps that Musgrave has played in his career, he hasn't been able to stay healthy throughout his college career, and just they didn't use their tight ends, especially Musgrave, a ton. So he's not used to a 800, 900 snap season. So I think you're going to see a pretty steady rotation at that tight end role with Kraft, Musgrave, and with Josiah DeGuara, but I expect him to be tight end one. If he shows he can block, he could be out there even more than I'm expecting right now. I think you look at Jermichael Finley's second season. So Finley as a rookie was basically a redshirt season. If you look at his second year where he was younger than what Luke Musgrave, I think actually around the same age as what Luke Musgrave is right now. Jermichael Finley's second year, 55 catches, 676 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That is not my expectation for Musgrave this season, but that is my sort of, I wouldn't say dream scenario, because I think there's a dream scenario that's even better than that, but I think that's my high-end expectation for Luke Musgrave this year. Second year Jermichael Finley, 55 catches, 676 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And maybe you're thinking, Andy, rookie tight end, that's awfully aggressive. Robert Tonyan last year, who just didn't have the juice anymore. Let's just be totally honest. I love Robert Tonyan. You guys know that. He just didn't have it anymore. Last year, in this offense, with Aaron Rodgers not really targeting the middle of the field a ton, and with Robert Tonyan just not being able to separate, had 53 catches for 470 yards and 2 touchdowns. All right. So, you're asking in that same sort of role for Luke Musgrave, can he have 2 more catches for 200 more yards? Now, the yards is going to be different, but imagine a real tight end with actual run after the catch ability and a guy who can actually stretch the seam and catch passes down the field and not just be a, 5 to 10 yard intermediate guy, and a guy that can line up in the slot as a big wide receiver. I think that's possible. And, Tonyan had 2 touchdowns. I think he can have, I think Musgrave can have more than that in 2023. So, Yes, I think that Jermichael Finley line of 55, 676, and 5 touchdowns is probably a bit aggressive, but that's the high-end expectation I have for Luke Musgrave. And Tunyon's last year, 53, 470, and 2 touchdowns, I think that should be totally attainable for Musgrave. Another one that I'll look at really quick here is Dallas Goedert, because to me, there's still some similarities between the two. Dallas Goedert as a rookie. Now remember, he had Zach Ertz there. So this is partly the reason that Goedert's numbers were a little bit lower. But Goedert had 33 catches for 334 yards and 4 touchdowns as a rookie. That is my bottom line expectation. Like, in my opinion, Luke Musgrave should absolutely at least reach 33, 334, and 3-4 touchdowns somewhere in there. If he can get to that Jermichael Finley second year level of 55, 676, and 5 touchdowns, I think we're really cooking with gas. And I think that is a goal that I think Luke Musgrave should have, to be somewhere in that realm. Now, the issue is, if you go back to Tonyan last year, I mentioned 53, 470, and 2. The issue is that the rest of the tight ends combined last year had only 23 catches, and Josiah DeGuara had 13 of those. I expect Josiah DeGuara's production to remain just about the same. So there's only 10 more catches. That was between Tyler Davis and Mercedes Lewis. And you could argue that Tyler Davis, or at least whoever is number 4 tight end, maybe stays the same. So there's just not many, number 2 tight end passes that were completed a season ago. But I think we're going to see some rotation with Tucker Kraft, Josiah DeGuara, Luke Musgrave. So you could maybe see some of those targets split out between those guys that Tonyan got a season ago. But I also expect Jordan Love to attack the tight end position more than Aaron Rodgers did. I expect him to attack the middle of the field more. And I just think now you have better, more talented tight ends. So of course the quarterbacks are probably going to look more your direction when you have more talent in that area. So I expect those numbers for the tight ends as a whole to go up. I think we can see some wild plays up the seam, some deep crossing routes, which we've already seen in practice, the run after the catch, the speed after the catch. I think we want to see him continue to develop as a red zone threat, but that is my goal and expectation for Luke Musgrave this year as tight end 1 for the Green Bay Packers. Next up is Jayden Reed. And while I've been very bullish on my first two in Lucas Van Ness and Luke Musgrave, I'm going to peel back a little bit on Jayden Reed. I'm going to say that he ends up as wide receiver 4 and possibly even punt returner 1. And I know some of you are immediately going to think, you forgetting the all-pro returner Keyshawn Nixon? I am not. I can promise you I am not. However, watch Keyshawn Nixon a little bit. He is a much better kick returner than he is a punt returner. And I'm not saying he's a bad punt returner, because he had some dynamic plays in him last year as a punt returner. However, watch him catch the ball. There's a little bit of a higher level of discomfort with him fielding punts than there was with him fielding kicks. And I just thought he was ultimately better fielding kicks than he was at punts. I still think he's extremely dangerous as a punt returner. So don't get me wrong. If they decide to go Keyshawn Nixon punt returner as well, I will not be upset, because I want Keyshawn Nixon to have the ball in his hands a lot. Also, Keyshawn Nixon is going to be the starting slot, so they may want to scale him back just a little bit, especially if they have another option at returner that could be also very dynamic, which I think Jayden Reed can be. So there is a world that I think is possible where Keyshawn Nixon is your starting slot and your primary kick returner, and Jayden Reed actually takes over as the primary punt returner. So I'm going to say Jayden Reed ends up wide receiver 4 and punt returner 1. I do think his development as a wide receiver could take just a little bit more time. It would not shock me if Samori Toure ended up being the number 3 wide receiver behind Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, in large part due to the fact that those 3 receivers have had a year in the system already, and they've had opportunities to learn, and they've had opportunities to work with Jordan Love. But from a numbers standpoint, I do think, that Jayden Reed is going to have opportunities to play in the slot. And I go back to Randall Cobb a season ago. He had 13 games. He had 34 catches, 417 yards, and a touchdown. Now, I think Jayden Reed can very much be in that same conversation as what Randall Cobb brought to the table a season ago. 34 catches, 417 yards, and a touchdown. Even if he's wide receiver 4, I think that's well within the realm of possibility. So those are sort of the numbers that I'm looking for Jayden Reed this upcoming season. The bigger thing is I want to see a steady progression from Jayden Reed and continues to get much better over time. I think he is going to get a lot of snaps, or at least a lot of opportunity from the slot. And if he can make the most of those opportunities, I think he could earn himself more playing time, probably more targets, more catches, etc. But I do think he needs to get a little bit more precise with the details. I think he needs to learn the nuances of the game a little bit more. I think he's highly competitive. I think that will come through the course of the year, but I think that ramp up period is just going to be a little bit longer for Jayden Reed. And don't be shocked if it's Doubs, Watson, and Toure who end up getting the primary snaps at the beginning of the season. That brings us to Tucker Kraft. expect him to be tight end 2, tight end 3, at least in that rotation. The big question is just going to also be how far is his blocking, and can he be a better blocker than Musgrave? And if so, you could start seeing him get some of those early down snaps. If he gets early down snaps, he's going to get some play action snaps. If he makes the most out of those, shows what he's capable of, all of a sudden you could end up with him being on the field more often than not. We also know that, that Matt LaFleur loves using 2 tight ends. So it would not surprise me if we saw a lot of Musgrave and Kraft on the field at the same time. But how he blocks, and if he shows he can be the ultimate better blocker than really any other tight end that they have right now, we could see Tucker Kraft get on the field more often than maybe we're even expecting. I'm going to say around 29 catches, 265 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Tucker Kraft as a rookie. Very much like Jayden Reed, looking for continued progress throughout the course of the season. I really loved his demeanors during OTA. You can tell he has a thirst to learn and get better at the position, which I love. And I do believe wholeheartedly that he is going to be the one to break this 3rd round curse. So I expect great things from Tucker Kraft down the line, but don't be surprised if there's also a little bit of a rookie ramp up period, sort of similar to what we discussed with Jayden Reed. Colby Wooden, I think, is going to be defensive line 4 for Green Bay. Clark, and then Slayton, or Clark, Wyatt, Slayton in some capacity after Clark. But those are going to be your top 3. I think Colby Wooden's going to get that 4th spot. We'll talk about Carl Brooks in just a little bit. I think he's going to get a lot of pass rush snaps to begin with. I don't think they're going to want to use him a ton on early rundowns. I do think he's going to have a real legitimate role with the team. Would not shock me if Colby Wooden ended up in that 18 to 20 snaps per game range. He shows great effort. It wouldn't surprise me if he had, I would say maybe 4 sacks this season in some of that pass rush role. I saw already some of those flashes of upside in rookie minicamp and OTAs. And I think the big question with Colby Wooden is going to be if a Kenny Clark or a TJ Slayton or a Devontae Wyatt would end up going down in some capacity, how does he hold up against the run, and can he be a legitimate key rotational player along the defensive line? I think that's where he's going to have to develop. I think he's going to have to hold up better against the run, have to perform better against double teams. If he shows he can do that, he can get on the field a lot more. And if there is some sort of injury, they're going to need him to be better. But I expect like I said, a legitimate role, somewhere 18 to 20 snaps a game this season for Colby Wooden as defensive lineman 4. All right, Sean Clifford, I do expect him to win the quarterback 2 job. Hopefully the last time we see Sean Clifford this season is in the last week of preseason. I did, preview a video of Sean Clifford earlier this year showing that he has impeccable kneel down form. So hopefully we get to see him in some of those capacities at the end of game, kneeling down the ball, subbing in for Jordan Love, and taking over for the great Tim Boyle and Kirk Benkert as the kneel down specialist in Green Bay. Jordan Love had 21 attempts a season ago. If we could mirror that and we could promise Jordan Love to stay relatively healthy through the course of the year, that would be amazing. I think the question is going to be how much of the offense can he pick up and how quickly, and what can he provide for Jordan Love? That second string quarterback, that backup quarterback, has a very big role in preparing Jordan Love for the week. I think if Sean Clifford can prove that he can pick up the offense quickly and be that, not mentor, but, be that sort of buddy, sort of for Jordan Love, and that, helping him prepare throughout the week, I think that's going to be a big part of Sean Clifford's role as well. So the sooner he can pick up the offense, the better. This is a smart player who's had a lot of experience in college, and hopefully he's able to come in and learn that offense relatively quick. And if so, he could very much be of some service as he, helps Jordan Love prepare for the week, but more importantly, learn that offense. And if in a pinch he is needed, he can come in and, hopefully run your offense, at least in some capacity, not maybe to the Jordan Love obvious capacity, but if he can come in and at least run the plays, that would be a very good start for Sean Clifford as QB2 this upcoming season. All right, Dontavian Wix, I'm going to say he ends up being wide receiver 5 behind, Jayden Reed and the 3 starters that I talked about already in Toure, Watson, and Romeo Doubs. I would love to see Dontavian Wix take Samori Toure's playbook from a season ago and just say, that's what I want to try and do. Samori Toure played in multiple games. He only ended up with 10 targets, 5 catches, 82 yards, and a touchdown. But it is what he did on the field that showed that, this guy can play and he deserves more playing time a season from now. And there could be a world in which Dontavian Wix needs to play sooner if there's some injuries. I like some of the flashes that I saw. I like the potential. I think he's going to have to really master and learn the offense. He needs to hone his craft at wide receiver, as every rookie wide receiver does. I think the question is going to be is if he is forced into a bigger role, can he step up and grab that opportunity and really run with it? But I would expect this to be a player that we see progress throughout the season, see a little bit of on the field, but hopefully not a ton, because if it is, it's probably due to injuries. But I like the potential, I like the upside, and look for him to progress throughout the season and be ready to go and help out more in 2024. All right, Karl Brooks, defensive lineman 5. Can he find himself that niche role? Can he be used some on the edge, specifically in rundowns? Because that could be a huge help for the Packers on early downs if you've got a 300-pound edge player, which is what he played in college, setting the edge in the run game. That'd be great. If he can do that, he could get himself on the field more often. I think he can also be a pass rusher on the interior on some obvious passing downs. If he shows that he has the capability of doing that, he can see the field in a little bit better capacity. So I think his uniqueness and what he can potentially bring to the table can help him maybe develop a little bit of a niche role for this defense. And if so, then he can start getting on the field more and maybe making a little bit more of an impact. A big part of that is going to be Jerry Montgomery and Joe Barry and just how creative they are with him and how they can use him in different ways. How does he transition to the NFL coming from Bowling Green at a smaller program? Would not surprise me if he got about 10 to 15 snaps per game, probably more as a pass rush specialist, but can be moved all around the defensive front. And a name that keeps coming to mind for me for Karl Brooks is Corey Williams, the former Packers defensive lineman, who was also taken in the 6th round as a rookie. He played in 12 games, 24 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. I don't know whether the stats are the same, but if Colby Brooks could follow that similar trajectory through the first 3 to 4 years of Corey Williams' career, that would be a great place to start for Karl Brooks. Anders Carlson, he will be the kicker in all likelihood for this upcoming season, so kicker 1, if you will. Remember, he only made 71.8% of his kicks or his field goals in college, made 98.3% of his college extra points. I looked at Cade York, who was a rookie kicker a season ago, who made 24 out of 32 field goals, 35 out of 37 extra points. Listen, they're not sexy numbers, but this is a rookie kicker who had some struggles in college. Cade York showed last year as a rookie it can be a little bit difficult to kick in the NFL. I think those numbers are going to be very similar to what we see with Anders Carlson. 24 out of 32 in field goals, 35 out of 37 on extra points. That'd be 75% field goals, 94.6% on extra points. Hopefully it's better, but let's just say as a rookie, I think there's going to be some hiccups along the way with Anders Carlson. Carrington Valentine, expect him to be corner 6. I think this could be a redshirt season for him. I do think there's a possibility that he could get used in a pinch early if some injuries hit. Remember, Eric Stokes might not be ready to start the season. And then if you've got Jair Nixon and Rasul Douglas and somebody goes out on the outside, who are you going with? Corey Valentine? Carrington Valentine? Keandre Thomas? Like there's just not Shamar Jean-Charles, who's more of an inside guy. There's not a lot of great options there. So if there is a issue early, if there's an injury early, Carrington Valentine could get himself in that conversation, but I think he's probably more corner 6. Hopefully there's no injuries and he can use this a little bit more as a redshirt season. Lou Nichols, running back 3/4, late roster spot or like one of the last roster spots or maybe a practice squad guy. Wouldn't surprise me if he was a preseason star. I could see him getting going early in preseason and continuing that throughout the 3 games that Green Bay gets in the preseason. I think if there is a running back injury, that there's a great possibility that it's more of your Patrick Taylor / Tyler Goodson that get a little bit more of an opportunity. But we know Brian likes to keep his rookies, so he could easily be kept as running back 3. And it wouldn't also surprise me if he got some opportunity late in the year if Green Bay struggled in the season and they wanted to get some of their younger players some time late in the season. Anthony Johnson Jr., safety question mark. I don't know if it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have no idea. The safety room is incredibly intriguing, not in the best ways, but it's certainly in an interesting way. What I'm hoping for is a steady progression throughout the season. It would not shock me if he started as inactive to start the year and ended up starting late in the year just because of his potential. I really want to sit here and tell you that he's going to start sooner rather than later or make an impact sooner rather than later. But the reality is he is a 7th round pick. It's going to likely take him some time to make an impact. And there's a good chance that he's inactive more often than not to at least start the season until he can maybe show that he's more of a special teams player and is worthy of being activated on game days. But I hope he gets some opportunities late in the year. And I hope we see that consistent progression for Anthony Johnson as the season goes along. Last but not least, Grant Dubose, expect him to get the wide receiver 6 spot in overall 53-man roster spot. I do think this is going to be a redshirt season for him, though, even though he's going to be on the active 53. If I had to guess, he needs to get healthy first. Right now, he's a little bit banged up. Have not had a chance to get any look at him yet. I would like to see him get back on the field sooner rather than later so he can start integrating himself in this offense a little bit. Hopefully this injury does not linger. But this is another player who can try and use that Samori Toure playbook from a season ago. When you get your number called, when you get your opportunities, doesn't have to be incredible, but if you show that you're able to hang and can make some plays, you're going to get an opportunity in the next season, which is exactly what Samori's getting this year. Hopefully Grant Dubose, Dontavian Wix can follow that similar formula. That is going to do it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this, new and exciting and super tasty episode of the Pack-A-Day podcast going over rookie expectations. I will, of course, be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. Thanks so much for joining me, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.